right, so we are back after a break. I mean, a break on my side. Great to have you here, Andrew, as well. As always, how have you been?
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, I'm hanging in there, man. It's always a journey with being a creator and trying to figure out like how to grow and how to improve. So, uh, yeah, I'm
Yeah, or
here.
just how to take a break or anything, right? So,
Yeah,
uh, just life is lifing as a business owner, as always. I think, and I think neither of us want to position ourselves as someone floating above the ground saying we know everything, we've enlightened, we've mastered the art and science of business. Because and if anyone's watching this and sees marketing or messaging that says I figured out life, here's the payment link, 10K, make sure you run. Run fast. So
yeah,
um, just making sure that we stay on topic, because we decided to do a bit more kind of snappier lives that provide more actionable items, but within the next 30 minutes or so. I'm going to talk about something that's related to this as well, which is the length of our content, what to consider, what platforms to use, and what ways we can leverage different lengths of content sizes or content, so we can bring in people, attract, nurture, and then convert people into our programs, into our business, which is, I think, something that maybe a few people are truly clear about, or they are not using strategically the different, short form, long form content types, or they are like both of us who are learning how to be less long winded and be more concise and on point when it comes to creating content. So perhaps, Andrew, you can share a bit about your own journey, struggle, challenges of how you learn to be more concise.
I'm still learning. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I find myself sometimes trailing off on different tangents or thoughts, and so when communicating, I've got to try to be more concise. And this live helps a lot, to be honest. Practicing, watching myself back, that helps. And then with videos, you have the luxury of editing, but with lives, you don't.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think a very much overlooked entrepreneurial skill, which a lot of people may, conceptually know, but they might not actively practice in terms of improving, is communication, right? How we get to the point, how we understand how digital marketing works. A lot of people are like, oh, storytelling, sure, we learned this in English class in the US, but the creative storytelling that people think they know how to do because they've done like essays and everything doesn't work in the digital space, where you literally have 1 second to catch someone's attention. And I think this is especially important in this age of what I call the AI content flood that is expected to, get even worse. I don't know if we should label it as worse, but we're going to be, people are going to be inundated with content that has been optimized with all these different copywriting techniques to lure people in and get people's attention. So learning how, as authentic content creators, learning how to communicate in a way that both catches and holds people's attention until you're able to convert those eyeballs into, you know, um, cash, not in the literal sense. You can, that's what we need to all master. And I'm a bit biased because I teach messaging and communication, but I feel like this is one of the most overlooked aspect of why there are so many talented and experienced coaches and mentors, but there's a disconnect with the audience who's leaning towards more of the beginners, simply because what matters more is not your expertise, but relevance and resonance. So when a creator resonates and is more relevant because they speak to the specific problems, issues, struggles, desires, values that the audience has, they will, win the client. So let's just kind of get into a couple of issues around this. And the first one I want you to talk about is how we want to look at content not as separate pieces. So perhaps, Andrew, you can expand a bit on that too. Do you think should we look at every single content piece as an individual, completely separate item, or is there a better way to go about it?
Yeah, I think you want cohesion between your pieces of content. You want to enroll people in your way of thinking. Whatever it is you're teaching often comes with some type of philosophy or approach. And I think it takes repetition and seeing it from different angles for people to fully grasp the full picture. So it's better to stay consistent with that messaging throughout all of your content rather than deviate and confuse people.
Exactly. And I think that the important part here is confusion, right? Because a confused client doesn't buy. It's important to be clear, but also to be repetitive in a way that you sprinkle around throughout your content the different elements of what pulls the right people in. And we can't talk about one side of the argument and promote one stuff and then use a long form video to talk about the same thing but give people the opposite advice, because that just would confuse people. And it seems obvious, but not many people really look into like, what is my messaging? What specific problems is my offer actually solving? So I work with a lot of coaches. They are amazing at coaching. They're amazing at getting um, their clients' results, and their clients rave about them. But when it comes to marketing themselves, the first question would be like, so what specific problems does your offer solve? They freeze up. They're like, I don't know, which is already a disconnect, because we need to be able to do that. So whether it's long form or short form content, I do feel like making sure that we cross-reference. So we promote our long form content in our short form content, or we even refer to another short form content that we might have produced before that could be useful. I also find it really interesting when someone comes into my DMs, they might have questions, and I know that I have a content piece where I answer those questions as well. I can simply send them that to not the lazy type, like, oh, here's the link, just check out everything. But when I built some rapport, it's always great to leverage what you've already created that answers specific questions. And, there's lots of, let's say, options on short form content platforms where you can answer questions of, like, let's say, react to a comment, and then that also links back to the original content piece where the comment was left on, which are all great ways to make sure that your content pieces live in an ecosystem and they're cross-referencing, which I think everyone needs to double down on a lot more now that, views truly matter. Like, not views matter in the sense, but being visible is what matters. And these connection points we need to have so that someone arrives at the point that says, I trust Andrew. I know he's my go-to person. So do you see creators leverage that enough, or is there some advice you would give them besides what I've just shared?
Well, I think it takes time to gain clarity on what your messaging is and how to correctly communicate it to people, from like the thought in your head to the words, to them hearing it, and to them, converting it in their own mind.
And then converting that into dollars, right?
Yeah, eventually, yeah. But I just think with starting a personal brand or selling an online product, you're forced to learn communication skills that I think most people can go their entire lives without actually learning, especially if they're not in sales. So I think that's just part of the learning curve, and it does take time. It takes practice, because I think once you say something in a video or in a piece of written content, and you see the reaction you get from people, and it's vastly outweighs the reactions you've gotten on previous content, I think you're onto something at that point.
Yeah,
And I think that takes experimentation.
true.
Uh,
Absolutely. And to me, messaging is always evolving because the market is always evolving. There are newcomers coming in, they are filling their space in the market. There are new problems created, like, um, as a messaging coach now, I have to include the importance, or, how do we prioritize or leverage AI? This is something I didn't talk about 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So as the market is evolving, there are certain problems, issues, desires coming up. We need to be able to evolve as well. We can't use the same messaging that we used like 2 or 5 years ago. And I think this applies to a lot of different industries. Yeah, another thing I think we need to discuss, and let's see if you agree, because I know this is something that we may not always fully agree on. Do you think that sharing information is value?
you're talking about sharing free information, like free content?
Yeah, sharing information, and yeah, thinking about free content and information, is that real value?
I mean, value is in the eye of the beholder. If you share information that people then take and make a positive change in their lives or whatever skill they're trying to learn, I think people would say, yes, that's valuable. I think when you create free content, the goal really should be to build trust so that people believe that you're someone who teaches well, that when you say something, they understand it and they're able to then go execute it. And I think when people, find that connection, they're likely to trust you and want to work with you further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So I think it's a lot more about how, again, communication, how you convey that information. Because if there are 100 people saying the same thing and they just say discipline over whatever, then you're just gonna sound like everybody else. And that, although that could be value, you won't be able to position yourself as someone who's doing things differently, which I think is getting even more important. So it's truly less about what you share, it's about how you share it. So it truly lands, distinguishes you as someone that they can trust, that they register as the go-to person, and that builds trust at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's an important point that is worth mentioning. I've been talking about this in my own writing lately, which is demonstration of results. So I think the people we find who are most successful are free to kind of talk about their life philosophy because they have lives that people want to emulate. Their content people follow because it's aspirational more than it's informational or educational. You see that a lot of big creators transition from talking about the particular thing that made their audience, that grew their audience, into talking about life philosophy. Um, I could name, you probably, if you come to mind for you, I could name a dozen right now. But I think the reason is because people want to know, what does this person know that I don't? And we get tricked because we see this person and we think, oh, well, I could talk about life philosophy. The thing is, nobody's going to listen to you if you don't have a life that they want, right? So we see these people communicating poorly, and then we think, as creators, we can just jump right in there and start communicating in the same exact way, but we don't get results. And
Yeah,
we're
because we're not
surprised.
communicating our lives. We are communicating the lives of the people that we aspire to be, right? I
Yep.
don't think that's what you mean. Like, people want to be the next Dan Coe instead of being the next James Smith or whoever they are, which I think is the foundation of a personal brand.
Yeah, you're right. You made a slightly different point, which is also really important, which is people are oftentimes trying to educate people on where they themselves are not yet reached. Like they're on this journey and they're kind of talking as though they're an expert on
Yeah.
something. but they haven't really gotten to that point yet. So
And yeah,
they
I'm very,
overlook.
very bullish on that. Like, there's also a divide on this. People say, well, you can coach people on things that you haven't gone through. And I don't think I would ever invest in a business coach, for example, who's still doing a 9 to 5. I don't know why, but I just don't feel like that's the right person to me, because they haven't gone through what it means to be a full-time business owner. They don't know, they don't have that lived experience. And I feel like that's where we could speak from with integrity. So um, there might be situations where you could teach people what you yourself haven't gone through, but when it comes to something where people need someone who's actually experienced something, they have a proven method, you cannot truly speak from integrity if you yourself haven't embodied that.
Yeah. And you don't want to learn from those people because they don't have the life that you want. They're not full-time creators. Why would you learn from somebody who you see as a step backward? Nobody's going to do
Yeah.
that. Right. So I think that's the mistake a lot of creators get in, and they start thinking, well, I'm communicating, I'm sharing my thoughts and beliefs on stoicism or whatever the heck else, like you said, they learned from some of these bigger creators about lifestyle design. And they're surprised that people don't listen to them, but they haven't shown people that they have a life that people want to design their own like.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I
people
think,
forget that our words have an energy. So it's not just communication. The way I teach communication is that, yes, you have your strategy or sales funnels. Yes, you layer on the communication and how you communicate that. But that also has a certain energy. So I could show up here and say, okay, Andrew, so what do we want to talk about? Or I could be excited. I could talk about something and people would see we have a bullshit meter in a way, right? In built in. We see when someone, I mean, people who are a bit more conscious, they see when someone is talking about something they haven't lived yet. And I think that's super important. You can always teach something. Like, we are not discouraging people from running a business because they haven't had experience. Just teach what you have had personal experience in. And then when you get to that level where you have experience, like you've collected a lot more, you can change your niche. You can create more products. You can coach more people on things that you yourself have also embodied and implemented.
right. And I think that's what people overlook is their own expertise. The niche that they should probably be teaching on in the beginning is something in their own life that they probably don't even want to be doing anymore. That's the paradox. Like,
Hmm.
the thing that you're most qualified to teach when coming into the creator economy is probably your previous career. What are people, most of them, trying to escape coming into the creator economy? Their previous career. So they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, so does that mean, Andrew, you are re-niching to teach like progress software stuff and everything?
You know, it would be good advice if it wasn't for, as you said, AI. I mean, I when
Yeah.
I first started out, I made a couple videos. I was kind of just practicing and kind of thinking I would just demonstrate that I knew how to make videos. I didn't really want to do that long term, mainly because it seemed a little saturated. But I think ultimately it would be a mistake now because less people want to learn coding. They want to learn how to code with AI
Hmm.
more so. Um, I mean, I could probably make some videos about that that probably would do well because I've done a bit of that myself with my own products. But yeah, I've honestly I've made the mistake that I'm talking about. I have often talked about steps ahead of where I was,
Hmm.
and the times that it didn't resonate are clear to me now for that reason.
Hmm.
That people saw it and they thought, well, why would I learn from this guy? Like, he's got X number of followers, and he doesn't have the wealth or the following that I want. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go with this guy. Uh,
I
so
think we need to look at our business as an evolution. So too many people waste so much time overthinking of like, this has to be the perfect and the only thing that I do for the next 5 years. So what should be my niche? What should be my offer? When the cool thing about business is that you can change anytime. the things you don't like. You can add things, you can take things out. And it's more of, I think we talked about this before, it's more of an evolution, it's more of enhancements, so you get to improve. You can take things out of the product suite. Maybe we can dedicate another live to this as well. Just to circle back to our main topic, I feel like it's less about the amount of information that you provide, it's more of the energy itself. So you have a clear purpose with that content piece, and you add a layer of your own authenticity and integrity. And the last thing we want to talk about a bit, I think, in more detail, is that a hook isn't enough. Like, a lot of people are crazy about hooks, and yes, they are important. Yes, having a thumbnail and everything else is, I think, 80%, 90% of what decides whether someone clicks and watches it. But what do you think about the people who obsess over that and the rest is just shit?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who get initial attention off of getting good at hooks or getting good at storytelling, but I don't think they get conversion. I don't think they have a lot of customers, because ultimately all they demonstrate proficiency in is hooks and teaching that. So
How to
sometimes
grab
they'll get some
attention.
customers that want to learn that, but I don't think they'll like get long-term
Yeah.
business.
And I think the mistake people make is that because they see how many followers and how many likes and views these people get, they assume they make a lot of money, and then they copy the same thing. So then you will have copycats of the same hooks, the same format, sometimes the entire script, and people wonder why they are not making money, because you have no proof how well their business is doing. Just because they share Stripe screenshots or just because you see someone having millions of followers does not mean anything. And I've seen this. I've worked with people who came to me and they said, I have 300,000 followers. I've been posting consistently like 5 times a day. I don't know why, but people are not buying my $27 product, right? And I'm like, so let's look at your sales like system. Are you funneling people in? Are you speaking to the right people? So yes, virality can help and it can boost your business, but only if you go viral in front of the right audience.
Yeah.
Which I think is important to mention. Yeah. Um, any parting thoughts when it comes to like content length and how we can make sure that we attract and then convert the right people? Something from your own experience.
Well, I look at short form content as a way to boost awareness. So, I post shorts. My strategy lately on YouTube has been shorts, and that's just been trying to familiarize people with me, grow my overall reach. And then long form is sort of more building rapport, building trust with people, giving them what I hope is value in the video, something that they can take and use and find improve some area of their life. So I look at long and short form content as two different levels, I guess, of that funnel. Um,
Yeah.
so it's more of a
It's about
consideration phase rather than the awareness phase with the short form.
true. It's really about becoming aware of the fact that you need to sell not just your paid product. You need to sell people on the hook, on the title, on watching the entire stuff, on even listening to your next sentence. Because people are so busy, they have so many options, they have so many different things they have to do, that if you're not quote unquote selling, as in building a demand for what comes next, you can't be surprised that you're not making sales. And I think this is one of the most overlooked parts of the message that says, oh, you just have to be yourself. And then, expect people to just, come in droves.
Yeah. I mean, I'll continue to hammer that point I made earlier, which is you need to demonstrate success in whatever you're trying to sell or teach. People want evidence rather than information, because there's no shortage of content now. We've got a flood of content. We're just going to keep getting more and more. as AI makes it easier for people to create content quickly and cheaply. There's information and there's evidence. And if you're just giving people information, but you don't demonstrate evidence of either your own success or your client's success, they're not going to see you as the person who's the authority.
Yeah, absolutely. And success is relative. So before anybody misunderstands what Andrew is saying, what we mean is a result that you have had, that you embody, a type of person with values that you already embody, because that's what people aspire to be. If that success means that I've, found clients for $500 per month or whatever, then that is success. There is going to be people who will look at you as aspirational, as somebody that they want to be. So if success to you is, I've done a year of running my business and I'm helping small business owners in their first year of running a business, to me, that's success.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have our own definitions, and I like that one. I would agree with that.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
So, Snappy Live, we're still learning how to make sure that it's concise, but thank you so much for William's comment. I do agree. I think Andrew puts a lot of effort in his shorts, so keep them coming. You get the feedback now. Even without feedback, you should know that you're making a difference. So thank you, Andrew, for joining. And everybody, let's get a lot more conscious and strategic about how we create content, because if you truly want to serve value, concise but on point and clear is just as much value as an in-depth something that you might provide. So thank you so much for anyone watching, either the live or the replay. See you guys next week.